Music 101 with your host, Alexis Steele. Sponsored by Steel Notes Magazine. You can find them at the web, folks, at www.steelnotesmagazine.com.
Hi, everyone. It's Alexis Steele with Music 101. It gives me great pleasure tonight to bring fellow Allentonian into the mix tonight with Rick Levy of the Box Tops. How you doing, Rick?
I'm well down here in St. Augustine, Florida. Looking forward to coming home next month for a couple days. Be fun.
Yeah, very nice. What's the temperature like in where you are right now?
Well, it's been cool today, but last weekend was about 80 and sunny. And I'm very, very fortunate. I have a small condo, like within 3 minutes walking to the ocean.
Nice.
Yeah, I've been down here a long time, like almost 30 years. So
that's a long time.
Yeah, longest I've lived anywhere, including growing up in the valley. Yeah.
Wow. Okay. Well, we have a lot of things. There's a lot of things to talk about. Rick, actually, you got started with your musical journey kind of from your Uncle Elliot, right?
That's correct. He was really my dad's college roommate, but we called him Uncle. And he went on to work for Decca and Columbia and London Records in New York as a A&R guy and a promotion guy. He was Benny Goodman's first manager, I think. And he was a lifelong bachelor, and I have a picture of him. I keep a picture of him by my bed. He's like my muse. Nice. Because, my parents would put me on a bus and let me go to New York City and stay in his apartment. And it was like going to heaven. I mean, go to bed whenever I wanted to, wake up when I wanted to. There was electric piano. There were records all around. And I couldn't have been more than 7, 8 years old at that time before I, thought about what I wanted to do or anything. But and
he gave you your first album, right? You got the first Elvis album.
First Elvis albums, yeah. And then, of course, I cut out cardboard sideburns and scotch taped them to my face and ran around the house and, with a broom or something, being a guitar. But that was, again, long before I, took guitar lessons or got, anything. This was just, 7, 8, 9 years old as a kid. Yeah. But it was important. Yeah.
How old were you, like, when you got your first guitar? What, you were like maybe 11 or something, or was it?
Yeah, I think so. And I had played some other instruments, started piano like everybody does. And I think I played trumpet for a while. I played accordion for a while. That was strange. But there was an amazing teacher in Allentown at that time, what was considered the bad section. I don't know what it is now, but 4th and Walnut Street. And his name was Watts Clark. And he looked like Mr. Clean, big, tall guy dressed in black, bald, chain smoked Camel cigarettes. But he was like an amazing guitar teacher. And I started lessons with him, I think, when I was maybe 12, 13. And I still use a lot of the things that he taught me. Yeah. So that was kind of my beginning. But, for me,
you had a Martin guitar, right? An acoustic, like a folk
I
guitar?
had like I had like a classical guitar, Martin, nylon string guitar. And I was just talking to my friend, who's another musician here in town. I don't have any Martins anymore. Part of the reason is the weather here is not great for an expensive guitar.
Oh,
with
really?
The sand, the salt, and the humidity and all that, but I sure wish I still had some of those guitars. Yeah. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So your first musical experience is pretty much with your sister, who was
right? You've prepared well. Yeah. Judy.
Oh yeah. Your sister, Judy, she was 3 years older than you.
Right. And she always had a pretty voice. And, at that point, so I was 12, she'd be 15, and I could play chords, and we did folk songs. We played folk music, Peter, Paul, and Mary stuff. You know, This Land Is Your Land. Blowing in the Wind, and we
So
played for some
where did you guys perform at? Where did you?
We really didn't. We just did some house parties. In my cousin's house, our house, maybe a friend's house here or there. Because by '64, it was like, after the Beatles were on Ed Sullivan, that was the end of the folk thing for me. I said, sorry, sis, I got to get a band.
On to other things, right? All right. So by around 10th grade, you had put a band together that played at Dorney Park with Chief Halftown. And it's funny because I'm originally from North Philadelphia. Okay. So I lived there until I was 6. And Chief Halftown, well, actually, we moved to Southampton, was in Bucks County. When I turned 6 after that. But Chief Halftown, he did all those shows. He did shows at my school.
Okay. Yeah, I remember he had a talent contest at Dorney Park. And at that time we had our first band, The Limits, and we would go back. We never got picked, and we'd go back. We went back like 3 times with a different name each time.
Oh, really?
And one time, my middle name is Jonah. So one time we went back as Jonah and the Whales.
Yeah.
One time we were The Limits. One time we were WAILS. Yeah. And but by really, let's see, summer of '65, we started playing. We started playing. Our first real gig was at the old Moose Home on Hanover Avenue. And it was hosted,
I did a show there once.
And it was hosted by Jerry Dean, the disc jockey who ended up owning the Mod Mill, starting the Mod Mill. And in short order, and of course, if you've been around the Valley, the Lehigh Valley was an amazing place to grow up.
Oh my God! Well,
it was really hip.
78, so the '80s, that was a mecca for music around here.
Well, it was in '60s too, because there was at least between Allentown, Bethlehem, Easton, Quakertown, there was at least 7 strictly under 21 nightclubs. You had to be under 21, so no drinking, no nothing, all live music, all live bands, and a guy who's one of my best friends now. We've been best friends ever since then. Ken Bray opened the first one called the Purple Owl. Over on Union Boulevard, right between Allentown and Bethlehem. And so all the local bands played there, Limits played there, the Shillings, King's Ransom. And then he once in a while, he even brought some recording groups in and stuff like that. So we got to see some of that. But it was also a time when, like, the high schools, they always had live music after a football game, after a basketball game. In the summer, all the swim clubs in town would have like afternoon parties or evening parties with a live band. I mean, we worked an awful lot. And consequently, all the bands that worked, you got good. You had to get good,
Sure.
And, luckily we saved, recordings from that 65 to 68 period, and some were rehearsal, some were live a performance. There were our first attempts at songwriting, and that and a later compilation. About 10 years ago, I licensed to Cleopatra Records out in California. So the Limits still have a cult following. It's kind of cool. I mean, some of our songs, have gotten 100,000
I actually remember because I'm in a book called, if you remember, the Lehigh Valley Music Vault from 1960 to 1990. I'm in there, and you're in there too.
Yeah, did Mike McKenna write that? Was that Mike McKenna?
Yeah,
Mike McKenna write that? Yeah. And of course, we were all in awe of Jay and the Techniques because they were the band from Allentown that made it. And oddly enough, that became my first '60s touring band that I worked with, and that led to my my career for the last 40 plus years.
Right. It's funny. Jay actually lived with a friend of mine in the 80s.
Yeah, I just talked to him last week. I mean, Jay's
I've met him once, but I don't know him personally.
He was a great guy, and when he was in good health, boy, he was a great singer. A great singer. We had fun.
So, Rick, you said at 15, basically, that's when your career began. If that's what started it all. If it wasn't for that, was that when you played at Lafayette College, and you opened up, that you played with actually the female vocalist that was a backup singer for James Brown's band?
We did, Queenie Lyons. Yeah, we didn't know we were going to back her up. We were just told we were doing a gig, and then when we got there, it's like we learned some songs and back her up. But at that time there were a couple of people. The guy who did, and matter of fact, we still do this song with the Box Tops, Treat Her Right. The original one was done by Roy Head, and he came to Sailors Lake Pavilion, and the Limits ended up backing him up. So for kids, it was pretty heady stuff. Now, why our parents let us play fraternity parties, I don't know. It's like none of us were 21.
It was different back then, you know what I mean?
Yeah. None of us were 21. We were anywhere between 15 and 18. But I think it was funny because we were all clean-cut kids from the west end of Allentown, and like being in that frat part, and we did a lot at Muhlenberg and Lehigh and Lafayette and stuff, and seeing all those frat guys getting drunk and throwing up and everything. None of us became drinkers in our life. It was really funny.
Wow,
it impressed us. It impressed us negatively early on, I guess. But
people always think when you're in rock and roll and stuff like that, automatically you're a drug addict or an alcoholic.
Yeah, well, I think it's an overblown, thing. I mean, not that, there certainly were years, especially when I was down in Philadelphia with the progressive rock band with Wax, with, the guys who went on to form the Hooters and stuff.
Right. That was actually my next thing that I was going to say. So you went to University of Pennsylvania.
I did.
Did you happen to know the booking agent, Bob Jones, who worked for Anton Productions?
No, but I know Anton. I know that name.
Yeah, that was my first husband. And it's funny because Eric Bazillion also went there, obviously.
Yeah.
He went to University of Penn. And I've interviewed, him a few times, and I know Eric. My friend, Fran Smith Jr. has been the bass player.
I know Fran. Sure.
Yeah, Fran. He's been bass player for a long time. He actually played at my first wedding to the guy that.
Oh, yeah, the real sweet guy. Yeah, the really sweet guy. Yeah, I mean, Wax was an interesting band. We all met at Penn. 4 of the 5 of us were at Penn. Mm-hmm. The other Limits guy who came with me was Bo Jones, who passed away. But Bo was in the Army at that time in across the river in Jersey, but they let him live off base. So he lived in this rock and roll house in South Philly with us. And if you look at old pictures of Wax because we played the Electric Factory a lot, and Playhouse in the Park in Philly and Fairmount Park. And here all of us had hair down to here, and here's Bo with like an army cut. It was really it was an interesting juxtapose.
So speaking about that, I was going to say, so when you were playing Electric Factory and you got that major record deal, you recorded a record plant in New York City where you said that Who and John Lennon were also recording there at the same time.
Yeah, we never met them because everything was with them, especially everything was super security. But there were 3 rooms in the record plant, A, B, and C, and we were the new kids and in the smallest studio, which was the C studio. And I think it was the Who in A and Lennon in B. But then 3 weeks into recording, the IRS shut the label down that we were signed to for tax stuff.
That's great.
And the album never got finished. And we ended up having an audition with Vanguard Records, but by that time, kind of the energy, you're young and you go through that kind of elation and disappointment so fast, it kind of took the sail out of some winds. And now we kind of look back at it. But we did have an incredible live audition tape, the one we did for Vanguard. And we kept that. Actually, our old manager kept that. And a number of years ago, must be 10, 15 years ago, got it to Rob Hyman, who was in Wax and then went on to form Baby Grand and then the Hooters. And and that tape we remixed and cleaned up and everything. And another one of our Penn mates, University of Pennsylvania mates and housemate, became a music attorney and has his own music label and film company. So he released the Wax stuff a number of years ago. So it's just great that the stuff is still around, you know.
Oh yeah, sure.
So those were really good. And Wax was very good. We played with Manfred Mann, the Everly Brothers, John Mayall, the Byrds. So, you know, it was pretty heady times. I remember we signed the contract. It was a division of Atlantic Records. We signed it on my 21st birthday, and then it all went to shit. So, you know, and you know, shortly thereafter,
when Wax broke up. You got married after that, and is that when you started?
I got married. My first wife, got married, and we went up to Boston for a while. I tried going to music school at Berkeley for a bit, but it was not a good match. Boston was cool. And what I ended up doing is just writing songs every day. And then my ex and I, you know, we said, it's a great city, but it's too damn cold. You know, it's way colder than the Lehigh Valley in the winter. So we moved actually back down to the Philly area. And
where in Philly were you living?
We were living in Chestnut Hill, real nice area. She was from Chestnut Hill, and our son was born there in '76. And then we moved back up to the Lehigh Valley, and
then you were working for your dad's pants factory for like
I was
10,
working.
years.
Yeah, I guess 8 or 9 years, and then we regrouped the Limits during that period too, and started our own label. And that was with me and Bo and Hub Wilson, who you probably know, Hub, the photographer.
Hub actually lives down the street from me.
Okay, Hub's a great guy. And another fellow named Pete Smoyer. And we ended up releasing a few albums and singles. And I really learned a lot. That was my biggest learning period because we got distribution for the label. I arranged a license to a label in France. So, and it was all original stuff then. All the Limits stuff in the 80s was all, you know, all original things. And somewhere during that period, mid 80s, is when I was asked to join Jay and the Techniques. Jay wanted to, because the mid 80s were like the first incarnation of the oldies market.
Right.
Because all the 60s fans were now 35, 40 years, you know, have families, they had money. So the whole oldies thing started to really gear up in the mid 80s.
Right. So when you were doing that, was that before or after your family business shut down and you started?
That was about the same time. I was also my ex and I had split up, and I ended up raising my son. I was a single dad, and I wanted to play, but I didn't want to travel. So I got a teaching degree, and I taught school for a few years in Parkland, right? And Nitchman and Bethlehem, and in Ironton, which was part of the Parkland district. And then in '88, me and Bo and Dave Fry, who I'm sure you know from Godfrey Daniels,
right?
We put that program together, that musical assembly program called Rock Roots, the history of rock and roll. And Dave's still doing it all these years later, 40 years later. They're still going.
That's amazing.
It is amazing. And From 88 on, music was my sole source of income. 93, I was remarried. We picked up and moved to Florida and never looked back. I got busy touring. I started managing other 60s artists. I started booking them. So
Right. I saw that you were working too with Tommy Rowe and a lot of other people.
yeah, Tommy and Dennis Yost from the Classics Four and Freddie Cannon, Barbara Lewis, and fast forward, I had met Peter Noon a few times, and in mid '99 he asked me to put another band together for him. He wanted something very different. He wanted the recreation of the original Hermit sound.
Right. And then you were trying to give him more than that, right? You're trying to give him like the show thing with the original outfits that they had and the British and all that.
We did all that. Yeah. And all the guys were from the Lehigh Valley, which was really cool.
Yeah.
I was living in Florida at the time, but I knew guys who would be perfect for it. And one of the guys, Dave Ferrara, the drummer, is still with Peter. So he's been with him like 26 years. So it'll be good to see him and Peter, and I know the band guys, they're all great. It's really, very, but we had fun.
So on your trip to Nashville, that's when you ran into Gary Telley, the songwriter and the original Box Top guitarist. And
correct.
Also he wanted to regroup, and that was including at that time Alex Chilton.
It was all five of the original members. And Jay and I were doing a TV show in Nashville, and Gary was in the audience, and he and I hit it off. We met for lunch, and he told me what was going on. And, how could you be in a garage band and not play the letter? We all played it when we were kids.
Yeah.
So he said, well, he said, we're going to, I'm going to Memphis, such and such. We're recording. And he said, come down if you want. So I did, on my own dime. I flew down, spent a couple days with the guys, just kind of kept it real loose, met everybody. And I said, listen, if you want to do some dates, I'd love the opportunity to try to book you, get you some work, and take care of advancing the shows for you and everything like that. Because I knew how to do. I'd been doing that already for 10 years at least. And that relationship lasted until Alex died. So it was from 96 to 2010.
Right.
Yeah.
So then you put the Box Tops back on the road again, and you said you were promoting a series of oldies shows, and Peter Noon wanted your help with a couple of cruises, right? A couple of cruise shows.
That's how it started with Peter. Yeah, that's how it started with Peter, with the band. He and I knew each other because, back at that time in the early 90s, late 80s, he didn't carry a full band. He just had like a music director, and he'd use pickup bands in every city, like a lot of artists, did. And so when he came to Dorney Park or somewhere in the Lehigh Valley, he would call me. I would get a couple guys for him, and, we would do the show. So we were actually in Hong Kong,
oh wow,
doing a big event there. And that's when he said, I'm not really happy with what's going on. Maybe we can talk. And I said, hey, if I can help you, great. So I stayed with him. I guess I was with him 2000 through 2002.
Mm-hmm.
And
so at that time you contacted somebody else that I know, Bill Villa. I just saw him probably about a month or so ago at West End.
I haven't talked to Bill in, God, decades, it seems like. Yeah.
I hadn't seen him for a long time either. I was the executive director of the Lehigh Valley Music Awards from 2001 to 2006.
Okay.
Bill and Angie, I would always have them perform and stuff like that, but I hadn't seen them in a long time, and so I ran into him at West End.
Okay. And then, I was out of the valley then. I was already living in Florida, but I'd come up. We did up until a few years ago. We did a Limits reunion every 4, 5, 6 years.
Yeah.
You know, we'd get the guys together and we'd play with, either a high school class reunion, or Jerry Dean had a Mod Mill reunion. Ken
Mhm.
Gray had a Purple Owl reunion. So it wasn't just us. It was like us and Uproar and some of the other bands from the 60s in the Lehigh Valley. And it's just always great. You know, it was always great seeing everybody. But, over the last, we lost Bo, and then his brother Chris died from the Limits. So
Oh, wow.
don't imagine we'll do another reunion. Although you
Right.
never know, who knows? Who knows?
Sure. So you compiled that was the best of the Limits, right? From 1980 to 1988.
Yeah, songs about girls compilation, and it keeps growing because we'll find new tracks, or we'll remix something, and Cleopatra has those too. So they're out there on all the platforms, and they're not money makers. I mean, streaming has hurt the business so bad. I mean, the
Yeah.
artists make nothing. But I know one of our songs, one of the tunes was up around 200,000 streams, which wasn't bad
Wow.
for an unknown band. So
Sure.
it's
Yeah.
and it keeps not just me, but Hub and the one or two other remaining early Limits. It kind of keeps that era alive, which is nice. I think it's nice
Absolutely.
anyway.
You said something that I thought was really cool. You said, I've played thousands of shows in my lifetime, including large stadium shows, but I have never felt the surges of emotion as lifelong buddies rocked out in front of lifelong friends and family, and sounded
Yeah, it
great.
was true. I think that was, if I recall, I think that was the first Limits reunion we did, and that was it was over on the Lehigh Parkway Shopping Center. That Parkway Shopping, there was a restaurant there,
Was
and
it the Skybox you're talking about? The
yeah,
Skybox?
the
Yeah.
Skybox. That's exactly what it was.
Yeah.
And um, and Bo and Chris were still alive, and there was a third brother, Rook Jones, the three Jones brothers, and so the three of them, and me and Hub, and the keyboard player was a school teacher. He was a lifelong music teacher up in Syracuse. Erwin Goldberg. He came down, and it was like, by afternoon time, there was like a line of people to come in, and it was like it was really emotional. It was really emotional because most of the people we hadn't seen each other. I mean, I guess people who stayed around the Lehigh Valley, they probably had seen each other, but for me, it was like, and I say it with 100% honesty. No limits, no career for me. It's that simple. It's that simple. That everything everything turned from black and white to color when the Limits started. I mean, first girlfriend, first car, everything was like new and exciting,
Right.
and it was this was before the drug era too. It was innocent. It was really innocent.
Mhm.
Um, um, and I talk to a lot of, because I follow a lot of. There's a great group on Facebook called '60s Pennsylvania Teen Bands. And it's just guys or girls who were in bands in the '60s from Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
So we always kind of message each other and stuff like that.
Cool.
And yeah, yeah. And
So how
then
often these days, how often are you performing?
not much. It was pretty good up until COVID, as much as we wanted to. I mean,
Hmm.
we really only want to do about 20 shows a year with the box stops.
Hmm.
Well, I'm 76. A couple of the guys are older. The playing is easy. The traveling just gets more and more difficult.
Yeah.
It's just now with this,
Now, do you
you know,
guys fly all over the place? You got a tour bus with
yeah,
you?
we fly everywhere we go. We fly because I'm here, Bill's in DC, and three of the guys are in Nashville.
Hmm.
Um, so I coordinate. That's part of my job as manager. Flights, hotels. Plus, we hire a live horn section. You know, if we're going to do Memphis music, we're going to do it with live horns. We're not using a cheesy synthesizer.
Right,
So,
right.
like at the State Theater, the show with the Hermits, a good friend of mine from Bethlehem, Neil Wetzel. He's a professor at Moravian, and he's great sax player. So he's putting together a 3-piece horn section for us there and everything. And
I remember you mentioning too, and I think Roger Gerke and Wayne Akey, some other
yeah,
familiar.
yeah, they all played it. They all played in, you know, short times in later incarnations of the Limits. And
Mhm.
Raj is in Delaware, great blues. He's pretty much strictly blues player.
Yeah,
And of course,
yeah,
Wayne Smith from
yeah,
BC Blues, I think,
yeah.
you know. Um, um, so, you know, I've known all these guys for, well, it's hard, you know, I think now, oh, I've known them for a while. Well, it's like 40 years already. It's crazy. Yeah.
Right, exactly, exactly.
Yeah.
So
And
now, when you're not, gigging and stuff like that, you're doing other things. I saw you like to run. You're doing yoga, pottery,
I'm a
stuff like.
real serious, yeah, I can't run anymore, unfortunately. I was a distance runner for 30 some years, and you don't want to see the x-rays of my back.
Oh wow.
It's really messed up. So I about 20 years ago, I started yoga, hot yoga. So I do that about 4 or 5 times a week. I swim. You know, fortunately we have good weather, so I swim as much as I can. I ride bike, and I make pottery. I'm a potter.
I
um,
saw that. Hmm.
yeah, so I love to make pottery, and which I started at Allentown at William Allen, you know, in art class, and it always intrigued me, and I would mess around with it. I would start, stop, and then here in St. Augustine, a studio opened about 10, 12 years ago, a teaching studio, and I said, "Damn it, I'm going to learn how to do this stuff," you know.
Yeah.
So and I sell almost everything I make on Facebook, and it's mostly to music people who know me, who've come to know me over the years, and it's real nice. You know, they have something personal, and
That's nice.
yeah, yeah. So it's fun, and I have a local duo, and we play maybe 3, 4 times a month around here. Just me. I
Okay.
play acoustic, and my partner plays bass, and we both sing, and we do all 60 stuff. So it's
That's
like
nice.
that's my era, you
Mhm.
know. So yeah. So you know, the
And so
big
now
question we
I'll
all
give a little plug for your book because your book is the same title as your album, High in
the
the Mid.
first album. Yeah, I don't know if I used to keep a copy somewhere here, but I can't find it. Yeah, High in the Mid '60s. Um, I started writing. I actually started writing it at. I started writing a journal when I was on the road with the Hermits, because we were working like 100 shows a year. No, and he's still working close to that. I don't know how he does it. I mean, that's 25 years later. But
Yeah.
because one of the things I didn't really remember much of my childhood before music. So I started journaling and digging back in, and one thing led to another. And how did I get, how did this life come to be? You
Yeah.
know, and, you know, some people would say, "Oh, let me read this, you know, it sounds cool," you know, and people would say, "Oh, you ought to, you know, do an autobiography." I said, "Well, I don't want to do something and publish it myself. That's such a vanity project, you know." And um, I ended up getting finishing a manuscript and getting an agent. And we found a publisher in Carolina, Crossroad Press, who does mostly horror books and
Oh, wow.
sci-fi. But the owner's a huge '60s music fan, so um, it came out in 2018, and it came out in print. It came out ebook, and it also came out as an audio book. So you know, I've made a little money from it, you know, and you know, it was cool. Yeah, 2018 was a cool year because that was also the year the Box Tops got inducted into the Memphis Music Hall of Fame.
Okay, nice.
So that was really a great event. I mean, even though I'm not an original member, you know, kind of seeing how they reacted and keep, that we're all part of keeping the legacy alive.
Right.
Even though there's only two, even though Bill and Gary are the only two living members from the original five. So it's a really, I don't know how many more years, this 60s scene has. We say that every 10 years. Oh, geez, we only have another couple of years. And then 10 years goes by, oh, we only have another couple of years. But, I don't know what it is. I mean, the music cruises are always packed. We do those usually every other year. Last year we did two, the Caribbean one and the Alaskan one. Next year we already have the Caribbean one. And it's like 3,000 people on the ship. The whole ship is just, and they're all baby boomers and they're dressed in tie-dye. And it's like,
Nice.
And part of the reason is, I mean, at some point the acts won't be good anymore. We'll be too old, we'll be sick, we'll be whatever. But the music is going to last because it keeps showing up in movies and commercials and,
Sure,
and
the letter. I mean, we all love the letter.
It's been everywhere. Letter's been everywhere, so that, I think we won't play as much, maybe we'll play 10, 12, 15 shows a year. We got to go over to Europe and do a TV special in Hamburg, Germany, which was really cool. I'd like to go overseas again. I do a lot of promoting overseas, and now it's just an odd time with everything in the world. So, I don't look for anything great happening right away. So, but yeah, it's going to be a really fun show. I'm going to be seeing, Hub's coming out. He's going to take photographs. He'll be our photographer for the night, and some other friends are coming out, and I always like hearing Peter too because he sounds great. He still sings great, and his songs are so much fun. They're just fun to listen to, and it's and the audience has a great time. I mean, you think, what am I doing? Well, I'm making people happy for an hour or two.
Right.
It's not so bad. It's not so bad, and especially in these times, it's not so bad. So, and that's kind of, with some holes, gaps. I can't remember everything, but that's kind of taken me up to today, what's going on. And I get called. Yeah, I get a lot of emails and stuff from young bands because I'm in all these directories as a manager,
Are you? Yeah. So that's another thing I want to ask you. Like, so where can people get a hold of you, musicians? Or
they can get a hold of me on Facebook. Rick, just look up Rick Levy, St. Augustine. They'll find me on Facebook. They can go to my website, which is ricklevy.com. RICKLEVY. They can order the book there if they want to. But my email's on there. They can contact me directly. I mean, I have no problem with that. What I tell young bands is that, I kind of like to help you, but I don't understand a lot of the music now. I just don't vibe with it. Some of it's great. I love a lot of the acoustic stuff. Like I've fallen in love with this guy, Billy Strings. This young guy who plays bluegrass. He's like lightning fast. And of course, I always like blues music, and I like indie rock. But the business is very different. The business is very different than what it was. So I don't know what advice I would give people. Well, I give them the same advice. I said, if this is what you got to do, do it.
Right.
That's that simple. If you can not do it and be okay, then you shouldn't be doing it,
Right.
Or just do it for fun. And that's cool too.
Yeah.
Sometimes I envy some of my friends who, made a ton of money in another career and they have a weekend band.
Mm-hmm.
And they play on the weekend. They didn't have to deal with crooked agents and crooked promoters and, and all that stuff, But for me, it was like, you know, from the get-go with the limits, it's like I wanted to know everything about the business. I wanted to know how publishing worked. I wanted to know, how royalties worked. I wanted to know how promoters did their job and all that stuff. So, there was a time probably up through the 80s, where I knew everybody in the business, and I could call people and people would take my call and stuff like that. And but the reality for me, with all the quote stars I worked with, whether it was Jay or Box Tops or Tommy Rowe or Peter Noon, I was never the bride personally. I never had the hit. I was the bridesmaid. So,
Right.
but on the other hand, I feel very proud that I kept these artists working for a long time. I kept them working. I got us work, and we got to see the world, got to go, go all over the country, and I live, I'm in my same little condo by the beach, and I just rescued another dog a few months ago because my last one passed away. So it's
Life is
it's
good.
it's quiet and good. Yeah, it's quiet and good. I just, I see a lot of friends, I've got some health issues, more mechanical stuff, like my back and things like that. All my systems are okay, but I see a lot of people really struggling,
Sure.
my age, and this is the age. And it's like, I just hope that, I hope I can keep playing until I don't want to play anymore. If
I hear
that
you
day
on that.
comes, if
Yeah,
that day comes, if that day comes, who knows?
absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely. Well, Rick, I want to thank you so much for coming on my show. And
yeah.
I want to encourage everybody to come out.
Where does this show air, and how does
It's going
it?
to be on on the YouTube page for Music
Oh,
101.
cool.
It's going to be on iHeartRadio and Spotify. The audio will be on iHeartRadio and Spotify as well.
Oh, cool. And when will this go? When will this go live to those platforms?
This should be alive probably within a week, I'd say.
Great. Okay. So will you send me a link
Oh,
to something to
absolutely.
YouTube?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I might as well tell people, since it's coming on soon, for Lehigh Valley people especially. So April 25th at the State Theater in Easton, a great venue. It's the Box Tops opening for Herman's Hermits, starring Peter Noon. It's going to be a lot of great hit songs that night. It's going to be fun. So it's
Absolutely. Well, I'm looking forward to the show.
yeah, we'll all be out. The band all comes out at the end. Merchandise, we have CDs and stuff. So, especially people that I know and know me, come by and say hello and talk for a few minutes and stuff like
Yeah, how
that.
about come by and say hi when I'm there?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So this is great. And we finally got the Zoom working, I think,
Yeah.
acceptably. So it's great. And thank your producer and everything. And I really appreciate the interviewing me. Thank you.
No problem. Absolutely, Rick. Thank you so much. And I'll see you on April 25th.
You got it. Okay. Have a great night. See
You
ya.
too.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Give me a ticket for an aeroplane. Ain't got time to take a fast train. Lonely days are gone. I'm going home. My baby just wrote me a letter. Don't care how much money I gotta spend. Got to get back to my baby again. Lonely days are gone. I'm going home. My baby just wrote me a letter. Well, she wrote me a letter, said she couldn't live without me no more. Listen, mister, can't you see I got to get back to my baby once more? Anyway, yeah, give me a ticket for an aeroplane. Ain't got time to take a fast train. Lonely days are gone, I'm a going home. My baby just wrote me a letter. Well, she wrote me a letter, said she couldn't live without me no more. Listen, mister, can't you see I got to get back to my baby?